the unpredictable force in the room. Have you ever felt it? The moment a certain woman enters a room, and without saying a single word, the entire atmosphere shifts. It is not a seismic event, not a clap of thunder, but something far more subtle and profound. The air seems to still, conversations might momentarily falter, and heads turn not in response to a sound, but to a palpable change in the energetic current. She isn't the loudest, the most animated, or the one draped in ostentatious fashion demanding the spotlight. In fact, she is often the quietest, a figure of serene composure standing at the edge of the fray. Yet, there is an undeniable gravitational pull to her presence, a silent, centered confidence that makes everyone else, consciously or not, lean in. People may not understand what it is, but they feel it on an instinctual level. They sense an unshakable core within her, a profound sense of inner peace that is both deeply intriguing and quietly formidable. This is not the fragile quiet of someone timid or afraid to speak, but the resonant silence of someone who has nothing to prove. This is the woman who has discovered the most underestimated superpower in our noisy, performative, and perpetually demanding world: the art of sitting with herself in stillness. Through a dedicated and often solitary journey, she has learned that her true power isn't in dominating conversations or winning arguments, but in no longer needing to participate in them at all. She has unlocked a secret that so many are desperate to find: the profound freedom that comes from being so deeply connected to her own inner world that the chaos, judgment, and validation seeking of the outside world can no longer touch her core. This formidable presence is not a force you are born with. It is not a gift bestowed upon a lucky few. It is a force you become. It is forged in the crucible of self-reflection, tempered by the courage to face one's own shadows, and polished by the daily practice of choosing inner alignment over external approval. It is a power that is available to any woman brave enough to turn down the volume of the world, turn inward, and finally, truly listen to the wisdom that has been waiting patiently in the silence all along. The strength found in stillness. In a world that constantly bombards us with noise, the ping of notifications, the relentless news cycle, the cacophony of opinions on social media, silence is profoundly misunderstood. It is often mistaken for weakness, passivity, an absence of opinion, or even a lack of intelligence. We are taught that to be silent is to be complicit, to be invisible, to have nothing of value to contribute. But there exists a kind of silence that is not born from suppression or fear, but from an unshakable and deeply rooted strength. It is the silence that does not beg to be understood, because it has already done the deep internal work of understanding itself. This potent stillness is not the empty void left when words run out. It is the rich, vibrant presence of awareness that fills the space. It is the profound peace that settles over you when you finally stop trying to explain your worth, justify your boundaries, or audition for a role in someone else's life. It is the crystal clarity that rises to the surface when your emotional state is no longer a fragile puppet, its strings pulled by every passing compliment, every careless criticism, or every subtle shift in another person's mood. This is the silence of sovereignty. Most women are conditioned from a very young age to be accommodating explainers. We are trained to overexpress, to soften our no with a long apologetic list of reasons, and to provide endless context for our boundaries in the desperate hope that they will finally be respected. We learn to fill uncomfortable silences with nervous chatter, believing that our value is tied to our ability to be pleasant, engaging, and verbally reassuring. The monumental, life-altering realization comes when we understand that our grounded silence is the boundary. It is the firmest no we can offer, communicated not through words, but through an unwavering, energetic presence. When a woman makes the conscious and deliberate choice to turn her focus inward, not as an escape from the world, but as a radical act of self-reclamation, she activates a deeper, more resonant form of respect. People can feel it on a primal, intuitive level. They may not have the words to describe it, but they sense a definitive shift. They sense that they are in the presence of someone who is no longer available for manipulation, who will not be drawn into unnecessary drama, and who holds her own peace as sacred. When you begin to anchor yourself not in selfishness, but in this profound stillness, you will find that everything that was once misplaced in your life, your energy, your time, your relationships, your self-worth, begins to fall with incredible and beautiful precision back into its rightful place. Where your energy goes, your life flows. When a woman begins to truly, intentionally focus on herself, something profound begins to shift, not just within her own heart and mind, but in the very fabric of the world around her. This is not about indulging in the fleeting, surface-level trends of self-care, like bubble baths or momentary retreats from others. It is a much deeper, more fundamental awakening, a quiet, resolute, and unwavering decision to stop pouring her precious life force into people, situations, and worries that no longer offer a reciprocal return. It is the sacred act of reclaiming her attention from every external distraction, the anxieties about the future, the regrets about the past, the endless analysis of others' behavior, and redirecting that powerful beam of energy inward. Though subtle at first, this internal shift has the power to transform everything. It all begins with one simple yet life-altering question. Where is my energy actually going? In a society that relentlessly demands a woman's attention, her nurturing, her care, her emotional labor, her explanations, her compromises, her patience, it becomes dangerously easy to forget that her energy is not an infinite, renewable resource. Your attention is the most valuable currency you own, and the way you choose to spend it determines the richness, quality, and texture of your entire emotional life. The more you give it away without intention, pouring it into fixing others, worrying about perceptions, decoding mixed signals, or replaying painful conversations, the less you have for yourself. You become energetically impoverished, running on fumes, wondering why you feel so drained and unseen. But the moment a woman begins to observe her life, rather than just react to it, the moment she chooses herself instead of perpetually chasing the approval of others, she taps into a different kind of power. This power doesn't come from trying to control anyone or anything outside of her. It comes from achieving a profound mastery over her own inner space. Neuroscience has long confirmed this fundamental truth with what is known as the Hebbian principle. Neurons that fire together, wire together. This means that whatever you repeatedly focus on, you are physically strengthening the neural pathways for in your brain. When your mind is perpetually occupied with trying to fix a broken partner, predict a negative outcome at work, or agonize over how you're being perceived by others, you are actively strengthening the neural pathways of anxiety, codependency, and over-responsibility. You are training your brain to live in a state of high alert and external focus. But when you consciously and repeatedly begin to bring your attention back home, to the simple grounding rhythm of your own breath, the physical texture of your thoughts, the unwavering integrity of your core values, the solid feeling of your feet on the ground, you start to dismantle the old wiring and build new pathways. You begin quite literally to rewire your brain for clarity, peace, purpose, and unshakable self-reliance. Consider the story of Mina, a woman in her late 50s who had spent the majority of her life molding herself around the needs and expectations of others. As a devoted mother to 3, a dutiful wife, and later a full-time caretaker for her aging parents, she had become a virtuoso at anticipating needs before they were even spoken. Her days were a symphony of logistics, appointments, and emotional support for everyone but herself. But after her children moved out and her beloved parents passed away within the same year, she was left with a deafening, terrifying silence. The constant noise of other people's needs had been her compass for so long that she felt utterly lost, a ghost in her own home. At first, the quiet was an abyss, but slowly, tentatively, she began to lean into it. She started asking herself questions she hadn't dared to entertain for decades. What do I truly feel when no one is watching? What do I want when I am no longer needed? Who am I beneath all the roles I have played? She started small. She began taking morning walks without her phone, deliberately leaving behind the portal to the world's demands. She bought a journal and began writing, at first hesitantly, then with a torrent of uncensored thoughts and feelings. She learned the simple, powerful magic of saying no to a committee request, to a draining social obligation, to a favor she didn't have the energy for, without a follow-up sentence of guilt-ridden explanation. As her attention, once scattered across a dozen different people, returned to herself, something powerful and solid began to emerge within her. She no longer felt pulled and fragmented. Her conversations became more intentional, and she stopped responding to emotional manipulation or passive aggression with frantic explanations. Instead, she offered only calm, observant silence. To her astonishment, people began to treat her with a newfound respect. They didn't push her boundaries as they once had. They listened more when she spoke. It wasn't because she had demanded it with force, but because she now radiated it from within. She had reclaimed her energy, and in doing so, she had reclaimed her life. Martin Tress, The Art of Emotional Sovereignty. A woman who learns to master her emotions is not just in control, she is profoundly and unshakably free. She is free from the exhausting chains of overreaction, free from the painful, looping cycles of regret, and free from the suffocating grip of old, conditioned patterns that once dictated her every response. This emotional sovereignty is not about becoming cold, detached, or unfeeling. On the contrary, it is about developing the capacity to feel everything more deeply, more fully, and more honestly, without being owned by any of it. It is the quiet, formidable power of knowing you can be hurt and still respond with wisdom. You can feel incandescent anger and still act from a place of centered alignment. You can experience overwhelming love, profound grief, or dizzying confusion and still remain anchored to the immutable truth of your core values. For too long, we have been taught to see our emotions in simplistic, unhelpful extremes. Either they are raw, primal impulses to be expressed immediately and chaotically, or they are shameful, messy weaknesses to be suppressed, ignored, and hidden away. Both paths lead to a deep and painful inner imbalance. The first makes you a slave to your every reaction, leaving you feeling perpetually out of control and at the mercy of external triggers. The second disconnects you from the very essence of your humanity, creating a brittle and fragile facade that is bound to crack under pressure. True emotional power lies in the sacred, mindful space between impulse and stillness. It is the cultivated, practiced ability to witness a feeling arise within you, a surge of jealousy, a pang of insecurity, a wave of frustration, to honor its presence as a messenger and to hold it with compassionate awareness without letting it hijack your behavior. There is a profound teaching from ancient wisdom traditions that says, "Control your breath and you control your life." And modern neuroscience confirms this ancient wisdom. When a woman consciously pauses and takes a single, deep, intentional breath before responding to a provocation, she literally shifts her brain's activity. She interrupts the signal to the amygdala, the primitive reptilian center of emotional reactivity and fight or flight, and redirects blood flow to the prefrontal cortex, the seat of logic, reflection, higher wisdom, and considered response. This isn't just spiritual advice. It is a biological and neurological reality that you can leverage in any moment. Think of Ia, a woman known for years among her friends and colleagues for her fiery, brilliant spirit. When someone crossed the line, patronized her, or challenged her integrity, she met them with a storm of righteous intensity. Her voice would rise, her heart would race, and she would fight back with a torrent of sharp, articulate words, determined to prove her intelligence and her refusal to be disrespected. But even when she won the argument, leaving her opponent speechless, she always walked away feeling utterly drained, hollowed out, and agitated for hours, sometimes days afterward. She came to the painful realization that her reactions, however justified they felt in the moment, were costing her more than the original offense. They were costing her her peace. One day, during a tense team meeting with a colleague who had publicly undermined her work, she felt that familiar hot lava heat rising within her chest. Her body tensed, ready for battle. But this time, something shifted. She remembered a promise she had made to herself. She inhaled slowly, feeling her feet flat on the floor. She held her colleague's challenging gaze, and instead of unleashing the verbal storm gathering on her tongue, she said absolutely nothing. That pause, lasting only a few seconds, was not empty. It was full of restraint, of grounded energy, of quiet, unshakable power. In that moment of profound stillness, she understood something fundamental. The desperate need to prove yourself is born from a deep-seated fear of being unseen or misjudged. But when you truly know your own worth, when you have validated it for yourself, you no longer need to perform it for an audience. You simply hold it, and the world learns to feel it. That day, she eventually responded with calm, clear, and unassailable boundaries, spoken not from the fire of reactivity, but from a solid foundation of self-possession. And he backed down, not because she was aggressive, but because she was undeniably anchored. She had stepped fully into her emotional sovereignty. Leo, the language your body speaks. This profound journey of inner mastery doesn't just radiate through a woman's words or her deliberate lack thereof. It speaks even more loudly and more honestly through her physical presence. It communicates through how she moves through a space, how she sits in a chair, how she breathes, and most importantly, how she holds herself when no one else is holding her. The body is not merely a vessel for the mind, it is a language, a constant living broadcast of our inner state. Before you ever utter a word, your posture, your breathing patterns, the tension in your shoulders, and the quality of your eye contact have already told people how to treat you. They are energetic signatures that communicate on a subconscious level, whether you are grounded or scattered, open or guarded, at peace or in a state of reactive turmoil. When a woman walks into a room with this embodied presence, she doesn't have to announce her strength. It is simply felt by everyone there. This isn't the kind of presence that demands attention with loud gestures, aggressive posturing, or a manufactured boss persona. It is the kind that naturally and effortlessly holds attention because of its deep internal alignment. This power doesn't come from faking confidence or adopting a power pose you saw online. It comes from the arduous but rewarding work of cultivating a true and lasting home within your own body. Imagine Maya, a soft-spoken and brilliant software engineer who was frequently overlooked and spoken over in meetings at her male-dominated tech firm. Her ideas were innovative and often superior, but she presented them with a hesitant, apologetic energy. Her eyes would cast downward, her shoulders would be slightly hunched as if to make herself smaller, and her voice would trail off at the end of her sentences. She didn't realize that her body was communicating deep-seated doubt and a lack of conviction, even when her words were clear and logical. Her nonverbal cues were giving her colleagues permission to dismiss her. After attending a somatic awareness workshop, she began a simple but transformative daily practice. For 5 minutes each morning, she would stand barefoot in her living room, close her eyes, and breathe deeply into her belly, feeling it expand. She would consciously roll her shoulders back and down, releasing the chronic tension she held there. Most importantly, she would focus on the sensation of her feet grounding into the earth, imagining roots growing down from her soles, anchoring her to the planet. Over the course of weeks, something profound shifted. She wasn't trying to become someone else. She was simply returning to herself, fully and unapologetically inhabiting her own skin. Her voice, now originating from her diaphragm instead of her throat, became steadier and more resonant. Her gaze became more direct and held. Her physical presence seemed to expand, to fill more space. The next time she spoke in a meeting, a different energy filled the room. People listened. They leaned in, not because she shouted, but because she spoke from her center, and her entire body was a testament to the integrity of her words. Her posture said, "I belong here." Her gaze said, "I have something of value to say." Her groundedness said, "I believe in what I am saying." And so others believed her too. This is the unseen, unspoken power of embodied stillness. You don't have to yell to be heard. You don't have to push to be taken seriously. You simply have to be fully present and aligned internally and externally. Your presence becomes your power, creating a relational field where only authenticity and respect can survive. The world as your mirror. Every woman carries within her a unique rhythm, an invisible energy signature that precedes her into every room and colors every interaction. Before she speaks a word, before she makes a move, a subtle transmission takes place. It is her emotional frequency, a broadcast of her innermost state of being. And the undeniable truth is that people don't just hear what you say, they feel who you are. The universe, in its profound wisdom, operates on a principle known as the mirror effect, which teaches us that our external world, especially the patterns in our relationships, is often a direct reflection of our internal landscape. What we carry unresolved inside, we project outward. What we avoid and deny within ourselves, we often find ourselves confronting in the people we attract, the conflicts we repeatedly engage in, and even the kind of love we are willing to accept.